Hello, welcome to PC Jack. This week, Intel finally announced this new lineup of 11th gen Rocket Lake S processors. But how much of this is actually news by now? So, as Intel finally announced this new Rocket Lake S lineup this week, there's a couple of interesting thoughts I'd like to share and some information I thought we'd go through for today's video. Based on the Cypress Cove architecture, which has been backported from Alder Lake 10nm back down to 14nm. Now, as you can see, we have the current lineup that they've got ready for launch later this month. But for today's video, we're just going to be focusing in particular on the 11900K, as it's the flagship of the new lineup, and it's in a bit of an interesting position when it comes to its pricing. As you can see from its $539 price tag, it directly competes with AMD's Ryzen 9 5900X. However, it's slightly disadvantaged in the fact that compared to previous generation, 10th gen, the i9 has now dropped down 2 cores to 8 cores. If you are going to be comparing it to the 5900X, there is going to be an interesting comparison with the 12 cores versus 8 cores. But if the IPC improvement is as good as Intel has promised, then we could see some significant gains when it comes to single-threaded performance. CPU in the lineup that I'm most interested in, and I feel it is going to be the best value one altogether compared to the 11900K, is actually the 11700K. With its 8 cores and 16 threads and much more affordable price compared to the 11900K, simply going for the i7 this time around would just simply mean losing some performance in terms of clock speed. But to me, the 11900K with its matching set of cores and threads is seeming more like a golden sample of an 11700K anyway. You may find it worthwhile going for the 11700K and also seeing about any performance improvements you could gain perhaps by overclocking, for example. Either way, it'll be interesting to see how the i7 compares to the i9 this time around with its matching set of cores and threads. Now, in terms of pricing, this generation has not really seen that much of a price increase compared to previous generations, and it now puts Intel in the strange position of being the more affordable option compared to AMD's Zen 3 lineup, which is expected when you consider the huge improvements that Ryzen has made over the years. It is interesting to see that Intel have finally caught up and realised that they can't increase the prices of their hardware without anything to signify any decent improvement in performance. As we've seen previously from Skylake onwards, Intel have been happy to keep selling us quad-core processors, as that's all you apparently needed for gaming. And obviously with the introduction of Ryzen, we have seen that you can get better performance with more cores at a better price. So it is interesting that Intel have now reached this plateau, if I could say, where it is now considered the underdog compared to Zen 3. We can't get too much into performance yet, as obviously reviews are not out yet for 11th gen Intel. But when the reviews do start to come out though, it should paint a better picture of what performance gains we can see, especially with the 19% increase in IPC. Judging by the looks of the performance improvements, we probably will see a very slight improvement over Ryzen. But when I say that, it may be 2-4% perhaps in single-threaded applications, which obviously Intel will see as enough to gain the performance crown again, which just doesn't really justify the actual cost when you would consider the balance between Ryzen and Intel. Now, despite Intel only announcing 11th gen this week, as we all know, there's been lots of leaks and issues with this launch already. Recently, AnandTech actually managed to get hold of a retail sample of the 11700K, and they've published their review already on that. And also, you may have seen that Gamers Nexus has now published a video looking at the new gear functionality for memory on 11th gen, which is a feature that's in line with AMD's Infinity Fabric clock and just helps with ensuring the 1-to-1 ratio with the memory, which can bring some improvement. But obviously, any of these reviews that we see on the leaked retail units There can be some misleading results from that, as obviously there will be microcode changes as we approach launch. But it's still interesting to look at and see this new feature being implemented in the new hardware. So my overall thoughts on Rocket League S is that, to me, this does seem a bit of a stopgap between 10th gen and 12th gen Alpha League, which, as we know, should see a significant improvement in performance now that it'll hopefully be on 10nm. But we will just have to see whether that comes to fruition, as we've been waiting for 10nm from Intel for such a long time now. The other thing to bear in mind with 11th gen is obviously there is support for 400 series motherboards like B460 and Z490. So if you are on a 10th gen processor and would like to see a bit of improvements by upgrading, you could potentially go up to, for example, an 11600K from 10400F. And you can do that, but that would be the end of the line after that, as obviously once we reach 12th gen, there will be a new socket revealed as expected with Intel, and a new chipset which will not be supported for 11th gen. But it's also the same case with AMD at the moment. They've recently brought out their 500 series chipsets, which, as we know, are going to be the last chipsets to support AM4 currently. Unless we do see Zen 3 Plus announced, which is a slight possibility, but with the silicon shortage we're currently facing, there's a bit of uncertainty whether we will see any Zen 3 refreshes come out later this year. Obviously, we will be approaching Zen 4 and AM5, which is expected to have a new socket type and also have support for DDR5 memory. So even if you are on Ryzen right now, you are facing a dilemma of that you can't upgrade too much further now without having to make a huge platform change. Overall, I'm quite eager to get to the launch of these processors and actually get a good gauge of what the performance is actually like, and to see how it fares against Ryzen and its current Zen 3 lineup. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, then please feel free to like and subscribe for some more videos on the way soon. Let me know in the comments if you're thinking about picking up any of these CPUs. Until then, I shall see you in the next video. Thank you.